The story we're calling The Sandwich Artist.
A few months ago, I met up with a woman named Ellen Pizarek. Ellen grew up on a farm in Indiana, but for the last 15 years, she has lived here in Austin with her beautiful family. And Ellen's big question was about one of the city's most well-known businesses, and one of their marketing ploys. This is a place where you can get a turkey sandwich, sign up for the turkey trot, which has a turkey mascot. And so naturally, she and I just had to get dressed for the occasion.
I feel ridiculous. I feel like a turkey in every sense of the word.
Ellen's question was about these giant fake submarine sandwiches. They can be spotted all around town in various Thundercloud Subs locations, and much like us in those ridiculous costumes, they're impossible to miss. We're part of the spectacle now. We are drawing people into Thundercloud Subs. This particular sub.
Hopefully we're doing a better job than this particular sub right now.
Alright, so this prop sub had clearly seen better days. The colors were faded, it looked a little moldy, and it was maybe not the most appetizing thing in the world. Which is why after inspecting it for a while and embarrassing ourselves for no reason, we finally got to Ellen's question.
I just want to know where those sandwiches come from. Who makes them?
These sandwiches have been in Austin for a very long time. Anybody who's lived here has surely noticed them at some point. And to understand their origins, I took a trip over to Thundercloud headquarters in downtown Austin. There, I met up with Mike Haggerty.
We got those giant subs probably 25 years ago.
Mike is one of the owners of Thundercloud, and after we got settled in his office, he filled me in on the backstory behind these iconic subs.
Well, they can't tell you what you're looking at. You're looking at submarine sandwich. That says better than anything.
Thundercloud has locations all around Central Texas, but only a handful have these giant prop subs. They're about 16 feet long, 4 feet wide, and they weigh anywhere from 400 to 800 pounds. And there are currently 5 locations where you can see them. Riverside, 290, Guadalupe, Rutland, and of course, 620. And the subs you see around town today are the same exact ones that were built all those years ago. When they get weathered and faded, Thundercloud will commission somebody to repair them. And sometimes in this repair process, there will be some surprises.
When we started rebuilding them, we found multiple giant subs with holes in them that had been made by birds that had nests in them. We never actually saw the birds, but they found it safe to be living in a giant piece of rock.
A few weeks after I spoke with our question asker Ellen, one of these repairs was actually underway. That's why I drove back down to the 620 location and met up with Gabriel Portillo.
We're about 12 feet up in the air. Right now we're just painting some ham.
Gabriel's artist name is Paste, and the day I was out there, he was joined by another artist named Eric Ross. Both of them are longtime creatives who work on projects like this, and this, and this. All of which is to say, they typically create art on flat surfaces. As I found out during our interview, this was their first time rebuilding giant fake sandwiches.
We're kind of winging it a little bit. But so far so good. It's worked out pretty... Yeah, no,
Yeah, so... That is not how off the record works in journalism. But it is totally fine because the day before I arrived, Paste and Eric spent hours and hours covering this thing in chalky white plaster. Which is why when I joined them out there, they were putting the final touches on their work. So what's the technique for painting ham?
you dip the brush in the paint, and then you just paint it.
Paste and Eric are both veteran artists, and seeing them breathe new life into the sandwich was honestly kind of surreal. At the same time, though, these guys were just the repairmen. In order to get to the bottom of our question, I had to make one final stop. That's why a few weeks later, I took a trip out west.
I know that everybody loves these sculptures, and they've done just what I wanted to create an air of levity, at least in the Austin area.
This gentleman is named Dale Whistler, and he is our creator. The artistic mastermind we've been searching for. Dale moved to Austin to go to UT in the late 70s, and when he first arrived, he was actually an economics major. But it did not take him long to realize that he could never be some suit-wearing businessman.
I was there in my shorts and Birkenstocks, and I thought, it's kind of a mismatch here.
Dale switched his major to art, graduated, and then started working at an ad agency doing creative work. And apparently it was at this phase in his life when Dale had his big awakening.
One day I called up a sign painter to ask if he needed some help with marketing. He said, sure, come on by. And when I walked into his studio, it smelled like the painting studios at UT. I said, you need an apprentice? And he said, sure.
Dale quit the ad agency, started apprenticing, and then got into the game of making commercial art.
Part of what makes these things possible and part of what makes them effective is to simplify an image. It makes them easier to create, but also easier to sort of digest visually as you're driving by 40 miles an hour.
The way you simplify these images is by using styrofoam, giant chunks of it. For the average person, this is just packing material. For Dale, it's a canvas.
You start with a big block of foam and a hot wire, and you draw on the outside of the block and then carve into it with a hot wire. So it's kind of like carving marble, except it's really soft.
After he has the general shapes, he puts them together, coats them in acrylic plaster to make them hard, and then paints the exterior in bright colors. Over the years, Dale has used this in similar processes to create commercial and non-commercial art that can be seen everywhere. Some of his most iconic projects are the Green Mangia Monster, the Hyde Park Gym Arm, and all this stuff on the top of the old Whole Foods parking lot. Dale is responsible for many of the iconic sculptures Austinites have come to accept as part of the city's landscape. But it's not like anybody knows that he is the guy who did all this stuff.
Now, this is a good point. I would expect that people would write, at least email to me and ask how I did these things, or say, write kind of a review of, gee, I love these things. But they don't.
Dale Whistler is an artist whose contributions are known but unknown.
I think over my career, I've gotten 4 emails, 2 of them from children who have passed by. Maybe 1 call.
Anybody who has been in Austin for long enough has seen and maybe even marveled at his work. But his art does not sit in any fancy museums, and he has no following of loyal fans. When Dale steps outside, he is unrecognized.
You know, one of my wishes is that in doing public work and then knowing me, that people would be inspired to do things themselves. It might be inspiring to people that, oh, he did all these things, he's just a normal guy. Maybe I could do something like this too.
Dale has also achieved every artist's dream of creating things that will outlive them. And we know that he has created art that will outlive him because a lot of his giant sculptures are made out of styrofoam, a material that is not at all biodegradable.
The bad thing about styrofoam is it doesn't go away. The good thing about styrofoam as an art material is that it's easy to sculpt, lightweight, inexpensive, and it doesn't go away.
Dale is no longer an Austinite. A few years back, he moved out to Wimberley to live with his partner. He spends his mornings doing yoga, his days meditating, and During our conversation, I got the sense that he felt just a bit of guilt about putting thousands of pounds of non-recyclable material into the environment. This really came into focus when Dale showed me some of his art that he has created more recently. Alright, so what you're looking at is a floating mobile made entirely of driftwood, rocks, little pieces of wire, and some string. This is what Dale now spends his free time creating.
I think the styrofoam sculptures occurred because I was addressing a certain need that people asked me to do. So given my own proclivity, I would create things more like this that are natural materials.
This is not very commercial.
Hopefully it's a little bit commercial. Hopefully
So, if anybody out there is in the market for some art that will not last forever, I know a guy. His name is Dale Whistler, and he is the man behind the giant fake subs. Thank you.